Okay, we good?
I object.
Okay. All right. Good evening and welcome to the Crystal and Pentagon City Council, the 13th of April. The overall mission of the CPCC is to provide with staff support, periodic monitoring, evaluation, and identification of emerging issues and potential solutions in all dimensions of implementing the Crystal City Sector Plan and the Pentagon City Sector Plan to assure achievement of the plan's goals and objectives over the life of the plan. So welcome everybody. We have, this is our first meeting of an expanded council, and so I'd like to welcome everybody. We'll go around the table and introduce ourselves. And then the first order of business we'll have to do is, if you guys recall, we had to approve an e-meeting form when we were the Crystal City Council. We're going to do that again very quickly so everybody on the phone can participate. So if we could start down in the corner, Rich, if you could introduce yourself.
Rich Nicola, Brookfield Properties. We own the former TSA headquarters site, Pentagon City. Now we've rebranded 12th Street Landing.
Hey everybody, Patrick Philippi. I'm with Amazon.
Susan English, Arlington Ridge representative to the Commodity Council.
Matt Devanzo, Aurora Highlands, Southampton.
Maurice Zepita, we have jewelers.
Good evening, I'm Wes Mayer with Simon Property Group of the Young Fashion Center, Pentagon City and Town.
I'm Mike Dow, I'm the chair.
Tommy Amal with the Arlington Economic Development Commission.
Emily Norton, Crystal City representative.
Pam Van Hine, Aurora Highlands. I'm Jill Braun, Aurora Highlands.
Jeff Williams, Arlington Ridge Civic Association.
Taylor Lodge with J.B. Smith. Robert Vaughn, Wet Properties.
Aaron Fuller with Crystal City Civic Association.
Matt Suzek, Arlington County Planning, Pablo Lopez. Just real quick, I think the speakers we're using are in the ceiling, so if anybody can just speak up, that way they can be as clear as possible.
Can they hear us?
Rob, can you hear us?
It's not a deal, but
Okay. You guys like to introduce yourselves online, please?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Rob Mandel with the National Landing Business Improvement District. Sorry, I couldn't be there today. Had some personal conflicts at home, so look forward to seeing you all in person next time.
Nia Bagley, liaison from the Planning Commission.
Judy Freshman, Crystal City Civic Association.
Jackie Snelling, Arlington Civic Federation.
Elizabeth Hardy, CPHD.
Thank you. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to do is review the e-meeting approval form and then have a vote to approve it. Matt or Pablo, do you have it available?
Yeah. It's going to be hard to read here.
Right. Well, we'll just pull it up while Pablo's doing that. So tonight we're going to go through, we have Elizabeth Hardy here from the county. She's prepared some demographics so we can refresh ourselves with what is Crystal City and Pentagon City from a demographics perspective. Matt Matusik will give us an update on the development plan. Patrick Philippi will just give us a quick status on Penn Place if we have some questions for him. Patrick also has, Amazon's proposing to bring a farmer's market to town. It's right in line with the kinds of things we want for building community. So if you will explain that, and then we'll have a quick look and see if we agree on sending a letter. Okay, and then we'll talk a bit about the priorities and concerns for the Pentagon Crystal Cities, partly to refresh ourselves with what our concerns are, but also to introduce those concerns to the new members. And then we'll finish up with talking about the work plan and the meeting dates for the rest of the year. Okay. All right, do you want to run through that, Pablo, and just kind of get the refresh everybody on how it works.
I'm gonna share it on the team screen first so that folks joining us first can see it. So, yeah, so basically this is gonna allow all the groups and commission groups appointed by the county board to have hybrid meetings. This has been adopted by the board already, and all the groups are going to be using the same document, which means that there's not a lot of flexibility or options really, but to follow these guidelines that the board has adopted. It's not a long document. It basically limits to 50% the number of hybrid meetings or fully virtual meetings that we can have. So if we usually have 4 meetings per year, this will limit us to have 2 meetings fully virtual. This document also allows for other people who are sick or they're traveling or have impediment to be here, they can log in virtually like we're doing today. So this is an official in-person meeting. It's going to count as an in-person meeting. Thanks to this document, we're going to be able to have people logging in from home. So it explains also that if you're sick or you're not going to be attending in person, just let the chair know, and reason, maybe a general reason, just so he knows. And it also limits to the number of times that you're going to be able to attend. And I think that's pretty much it. Pretty simple. But if you read it and you have any questions, just let us know.
All right, thank you. So this was sent out by email. I'll assume that you've all read it. Is there anybody who needs to read it closely, or you're all ready to vote on it? Okay, so to just kind of hit the high points, we can have half our meetings virtual. We typically have 4 meetings, so that would be 2. They can't be back to back. Any person can participate virtually up to 2 times a year. You just have to, you were in high school, you know how to come up with prepare the excuse. And so we can do that. Okay, are we ready to take a vote? Okay, we won't do Robert's rules here, but all in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, and any opposed? Okay, the motion carries, and we'll submit that as a thank you. Yeah. Okay, so
I'm going to pass around a sign-up sheet.
Excellent. Great, thank you.
Do we want to check with those joining virtually? Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm just
yeah.
Raise your hand.
Yeah, hey, hey, folks virtually, was there any, do you approve the e-meeting invite? Okay, great. Rob? Okay, all right. Dia? Okay, we'll catch up with you. Okay. All right, let's move into today's business. And we have Elizabeth Hardy joining us virtually tonight. And Elizabeth has prepared a presentation on the demographics of Crystal and Pentagon cities. Elizabeth, are you good to go?
Yes, I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully that works.
Okay. Oh, and I'd like to just say, we asked Elizabeth to just put some measures together, but as she presents and think about, are there other things that we want to understand about the people and the businesses under the charter of this council as we go? We may be able to figure out how to get that data as time goes on. Okay, thank you, Elizabeth.
Great, thanks so much. So just to recap, I'm part of CPHD. I'm in the Research and Strategic Initiatives group. There are 2 of us in the research team. And can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm here to present, and thank you for having me, some demographics. I'm going to talk about our population and demographic estimates. I think you guys want to know a little bit about our methodology and also go through the 2023 estimates, talk about 2020 census data, and then give you a brief demonstration of a new dashboard. So to start off with our estimates, so, we're really constrained with the data that we've had thus far by geography. We have countywide data. We also have census data, but we're constrained by the geography. We're constrained by tracts, block groups, and blocks. And really, we always strive to provide demographics for meaningful geographies in Arlington, and having these constraints, it's sometimes difficult to get the areas that we want. Also timeliness. I know you guys, the 2020 census seems a little far because it is, was, but we still haven't received all the data from them. So we've only gotten back the redistricting data, which is total population age 18 plus, just total population age 18 plus, race, Hispanic origin, housing units, occupancy, and group quarters. That's all we've had so far. Normally, after a decennial census, the data is released about a year later. But just because of the pandemic and trying to implement new methodologies to protect people's privacy, they're running way behind. So we're already in 2023, and the next release will be on May 25th. But again, that is not all of the data from the census 2020. So there really is a need for more timely data. So we took a look at what we have in the county here and the data we have, and we decided to combine some data sets. There's the American Community Survey, which comes out to a sample of the population on an annual basis, and that does go to sub-county levels, but again, constrained to census geographies. But we decided to combine that with our master housing unit database, and I'll show you that in a moment. But we're able to assign demographics to each household and housing unit in the county, and then build that information up to custom geographies. Custom geography like a civic association. But this is the first time we're really doing this, so we wanted to put this out in a beta version and have your feedback and have you guys test it and provide feedback. We did present to another civic association, and there was questions about average household size seemed, different than what they imagined it to be. But when we delved, went even farther into data, it was because of, a divide in the civic association where one area with most of the housing units had a smaller average household size. So, I welcome the conversation. I welcome the dialogue to go through this data, to see, what we have and what you guys, your impression of your community is, and see, how we can paint that picture of what the data is telling us. So with that, I'm going to start with just talking about the Master Housing Unit Database. This really came about almost 10 years ago when we started that collaboration with APS and the Community Facility Study. So we started putting together one file of every housing unit in the county, and we did this in GIS. So it's down to the parcel level for single family, and then complex level, so it could be multiple buildings for multifamily. And we update it twice a year, but it contains every housing unit in the county by unit type. Also, if there are committed affordable units, the year it was built, affordability for apartments, and then also tenure. So just to talk about how we create these estimates, we start with the Master Housing Unit Database, and we apply an occupancy rate to this. We do this by household type, so single family or multifamily. And, an occupied housing unit is considered a household. So if there's 100 housing units in an area and there's a 90% occupancy rate, then there's 90 households. And then from households, we apply an average household size, and that's done at a geographic area, so at a census block group level for those households that fall in that area, and also by a housing unit type as well. And we get a population estimate from that. So we do that every year. That's pretty a standard method that we have been using. New in the last couple of years, we updated our methodology, because before we relied on that 2020 census base, but it's really hard to rely on that base when we don't have all the information and all the data. So what we did is we created a new methodology, which is essentially this, what you see on the screen, and we aligned it with the census intercensal estimates to make sure it tracked aligned to, what the Census Bureau says, and also to what our administrative data says. And we were able to get really close to the population estimates from the Census Bureau. So using that master housing unit database, it shows that we can have really great estimates by combining our administrative data and also with Census Bureau data. And that's a pretty standard practice that other jurisdictions in Northern Virginia also take this method as well. But what we did to get even more demographics and at that custom geography is we took households and applied housing characteristics from the American Community Survey to get the household characteristics, and then we applied population characteristics to the population nodes to get population estimates. And really the result was this dashboard that's online. So if you haven't seen it, this is just a snapshot of the dashboard. It has all these variables on it. You can select which civic association you would like, and the data will update and populate for that. What's nice about this is our 2023 estimate. So it's based on every housing unit as of January 1st, 2023. And we plan to update this on probably an annual basis, just because of it's very time intensive to do so. So with that, I'm going to just highlight some of the demographics from this dashboard for Arlington Ridge, Aurora Highlands, and Crystal City. So this is looking at our 2023 CPHD estimates for units, households, and population. Together, these three areas account for about 14% of housing units, about 14% of households, and then almost 12% of the population for Arlington. So as of 2023, Arlington's population, we estimate it to be 121,000. Housing units, 121,000, and with a resulting population of about 237,000 people. If we look at the breakdown by race and ethnicity, we can see that Arlington Ridge, which is the first bar on the left, is the one that's probably most like the county overall. But as we move to Aurora Highlands and Crystal City, we can see that the population is less white than Arlington County as a percentage. You can also see that we move from Arlington Ridge to Aurora Highlands, we have an increase in the Black and Asian population, and the Hispanic population decreases. And then we see that same trend going over to the next bar in Crystal City. Again, the Black African American population, about 13%. The Asian population is double the county average in Crystal City, about 20%. And the multiracial combined populations is double that in Arlington, about 8%, or almost double that, 8%. If we look at by age groups, we definitely see that these areas, Arlington Ridge has some younger population, but mostly Aurora Highlands and Crystal City, the population is 18 plus. I think, Aurora Highlands, we have like 90, looks like 92%, are over the age of 18. Same for Crystal City, about 90% are over the age of 18. But what's really interesting is in Aurora Highlands and Crystal City, that population 25 to 44 is fairly large, especially in Crystal City. So, more than half, I guess, same Aurora Highlands and Crystal City, more than half are in that age group. If we look at household type, this looks at family households and non-family household. A family household means, any two or more persons that are relatives living together. So if there's two folks living together and they are roommates, they're not related, that would be considered a non-family household. Also, a single person household is a non-family household because they're by themselves. If we look at the family households here, they're a lot less than the county overall average of 44%. We have Arlington Bridge at 38%, and going down to 32% and 27% for Crystal City. So the majority of households in this area are non-family households. And then we look by household size. The majority are 1- and 2-person households. So overall, the county, about 75% of the county is 1- and 2-person households. But when we look at Arlington Bridge, we're about 81%. Aurora Highlands, it's about 85%. And then Crystal City, 90% are 1- and 2-person households. So definitely a smaller household size for these areas. In terms of occupied housing units, we can see that Aurora Highlands and Crystal City, the darker green, are owner units. So we have only 10% in Aurora Highlands are owner-occupied units, and another 8% in Crystal City. Arlington Res has a higher percentage at about 43%. And then if we look at housing costs, so this looks at owner-occupied units and the percent of income spent on housing. And for this, we can see overall, if you're an owner of your unit for Arlington County, about 81% of owner-occupied units pay less than 30% of their income as housing costs. That is a little less for Arlington Ridge or Highlands, about the same for Crystal City. But we can see that those paying 35% or more for owner-occupied is higher than the county average, especially in Arlington Ridge. We're almost at 21% of owner-occupied households pay over 35% or more towards housing costs. And if we look at renter-occupied, we can see that a higher percentage of those renter-occupied units pay less than 30% of their income in housing costs. And then place of work. So, with this area you have great access to DC and Alexandria. I don't think it's that surprising to see that residents work outside of Virginia and then outside of Arlington, but still in Virginia. I'm thinking Alexandria area. As county overall, about 38% of the county works in Arlington. Not too far off for the three areas, but I think the one that is a lot higher is those that work outside of Virginia. And really, the great access to DC with Metro Rail makes that easier for folks. And then I know this is kind of messy, so I apologize for that, but it's always hard to display all these different commuting patterns in one chart. But this is commuting to work. You can see overall Arlington County, 46% of folks drive alone to work, but the percentage is much less for this area. Especially for Crystal City at just and Aurora Highlands, 27 and 29% there. You can also see the public transit percentages are a lot higher for this area as well. And those are Arlington Ridge, those that work from home is higher than the county average as well. So with that, I know there was a request for looking at the area that's here in green. Since we're still in the process of, trying these estimates out and everything, we wanted to provide you this information, but we felt it was best to give you the 2020 census data that we have so far, because we can go down to the block level. So the area in green here there represents 24 census blocks, and that I'll show you the stats on the next slide. But just want to give a little caution here about differential privacy. That is what the Census Bureau is using to make sure that folks' information is not, that people cannot identify individuals. So they're applying this new method, but what it does is the lower you get with the geographies, the less reliable the data is. So it's a trade-off, right? This is the first time they've applied that method to a decennial census. There's always, some method to protect people's privacy, but because of the rise of big data and, you know, a lot of open data over the past 10 years, this time they had to really put out a new method to protect people's privacy, which is a good thing overall. But when we want to get low-level demographics, it can be kind of frustrating. Just saying, the Census Bureau, you know, it's great data, but when you look at individual blocks, there can be some questions there. But overall, combining those blocks together, I think we see the same patterns that we see in the civic associations breakout. We can look at the white alone population is lower than the county average. The Black African American population is higher than the counties. Asian population is almost double that of the counties. And the Hispanic population is lower than the county average. Again, we only have population 18 plus, so we did a little subtraction there to get the population under 18 years. And again, you know, 18 plus is in the 90% for that area. A higher vacancy rate per household, and that could be because, you know, new construction that might not have been filled by the time the census was taken. I know there were a couple buildings that were under construction at that time, and they probably could have been occupied during the time the census was being conducted, but they probably weren't. And then you have your group quarters population. It says there are about 173 folks in the group quarters population. So with that, I'm going to do a demo, but I'm happy to answer any questions before I do the demo. There are. Maybe I'll just move right into the demo.
Thanks, Elizabeth. What do you, when we see that the population is going to increase so rapidly, do you feel like your data sets will keep up with it, or will they tend to be a year? Kind of tell us what last year looked like. What's your sense of that?
In terms of the population after the 2020 census?
Yeah, so the Pentagon City area has 3 profiles in the plan, that all of which show relatively sharp increase in population. Keeping tabs on that is going to be pretty important for keeping track of amenities, schools, and things like that. How does a county office keep track of an area when you have so many units coming online so quickly?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's where our new model really thrives, because we're combining that administrative data with the Census Bureau factors. You know, after the decennial census, Arlington did see a decline in population overall, and that is not something that is unique to Arlington. You know, all the major metro areas most of the major metro areas, I should say, across the country saw declines in population as folks were moving out. We are starting to see a rebound, and even our population estimates that were released by the Census Bureau a couple weeks ago show us, you know, slowly trending back towards that decennial census number. But we were really, I think, hit by the pandemic and the population that moved out of the area and moved to other places in Virginia and other places across the country. But in order to get those population estimates on an annual basis, we do use our housing unit data, and then we use the most updated information from the Census Bureau through the American Community Survey, and that comes out on an annual basis. So we take those factors, those average household size, those occupancy rates from the Census Bureau. We also use CoStar data for apartments, and we apply that data to our housing layer, and that's how we're kind of keeping track with the population. And when we first ran this method, we were calculating the 2021 population estimates in 2022. And we did it, and we're like, oh no, it shows population's declining. What are we going to do? And then the next day, the Census Bureau put out their estimates and showed population decline. So we're like, phew. But you know, I think our new method, you know, before we relied on mostly the change in housing, and, you know, just kept things constant and forecast that out and project that out. But understanding how we're changing, you know, on an annual basis helps us with that forecast and that long range. Last year we completed a forecast round 10.0 to work that works with the cooperative forecast with COG. And that should be, I think, adopted by COG next month in May. So we just completed that forecast, and the information for that forecast is in our profile. We still have population increasing, and definitely increasing out to 2050, I think, but just in the interim years right now, we've seen that little decline since 2020, but still, the growth rate, we still anticipate Arlington to rebound and continue to grow.
Thank you. Yep, Carol.
Yeah, I have a question for you. I haven't looked at your dashboard, but I spent a lot of time on the census dashboard. And the confusion for Crystal City is that you're now using the Civic Association boundaries as opposed to the Arlington County boundaries, because the confusion is that our Civic Association doesn't completely mesh with the county's boundaries for Crystal City, simply because we were the new kids on the block, and therefore part of it is actually in Aurora Highlands. So when you say Crystal City, which are you using? Are you using the Civic Association boundary or the Arlington County boundary?
So I think you might be talking about like the planning area versus the Civic Association boundary. So these boundaries here are taken from
the Civic Association boundary.
These are taken from our GIS layers and our digitized layers that match the Civic Association map. And those are what have been used for this data.
Okay, that was the answer to my question. You're not using the Arlington County definition of Crystal City, you're using the Civic Association. Okay, thank you.
This is the Civic Association, correct.
Hey, Elizabeth, I think I saw a slide that showed about 16% of population is working from home. Would that imply that 86% of the population here is back in office? And if so, where does that data come from? Because it just doesn't seem to feel like reality right now.
This one right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's showing that 16% of the population age 16 plus that is in the workforce is working from home. Versus, 36% that drive to work. It doesn't mean that they are working in Crystal City. They are working where this breakdown. So you could even take that 16% and say, 45% of that 16% works in the county as a way to think about it. I know it's a little confusing. I guess that's weird when you're working from home to think of it that way. But yeah, that's what the census, that's what we have for that block group data that says that.
I see what you're getting. It could be a frequency issue of people just sort of report one or the other. Right. That's how you don't get to the sort of 50 to 60% of office occupancy that you're probably thinking.
Yeah, and think about this, these are folks that live in Arlington. This isn't the rates for people working in those areas. So that's a whole nother group.
Any other questions? You said you had a demo, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I just want to show you how to get to that information. So if you have time, you can tell us if it's working, if it's not working, what makes sense and what doesn't. So if you go to Arlington County's website and you type in demographics, actually the second link takes you right to it, but I'm going to go to our demographics section here. We have the Arlington County profile here, and then we have some other dashboards. We have the race ethnicity dashboard, census tract dashboard, and then also this is the last one here, which I talked about tonight. So here's the main landing page. This has the population census dashboard here. You can also download the raw data in Excel or a CSV file here. And this is a reference map to show you the boundaries that are used for this dashboard. So it opens up in Power BI. It might take a second to load. And then it's pretty simple to operate. You just click the down arrow here and you can select the civic association there. You can select more than one and just you play around with information that way. Let me go back to the page here. There's also a place to share feedback. So if you have any questions or ever, feel free to fill that out and send that to us. And our contact information is here too if you ever need to get a hold of us.
Great, thank you. So is there any data that folks would like to see that we want to ask about? Oh, hey, Rob, go ahead.
Hey, just one quick question about the commute to work, because I think some of the oddness of that question's answers can relate to how the question is asked. Because can you maybe share what the question actually is? Is it, what did you do today? What did you do the last 5 days? What's your most frequent thing that you did? Because if I'm remembering correctly, it often hides the occasional user of, say, a bike, where your primary means to work.
Yeah, that's a great question. I will research the exact question and get back to you on that. I'll send it to you because I'm not really sure how the Census Bureau asked that question as part of the ACS and if it's changed over time. So let me make sure I have the right question and send that to you.
Any other, go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, Elizabeth, do you guys track how this changes over time to identify trends? Or
So that's a great question. We hope that this is the starting point and we continue to do this, and then we will be able to see trends over time. And that's really exciting, that question, because I love data and showing the trends. But yeah, that is exactly where we want to head to this. So, the more feedback that we get from folks, if it works for you, if it doesn't work for you, what other boundaries do you want, what other data do you want to see? And right now we're really limited to what the Census Bureau offers, so try to keep that in mind. But if there's other information that would be helpful for you, and what the goal for this is really to help civic associations get to data that they need. So if there's other things that you need or want to see on here, please let us know. We're happy to look into that.
Oh, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, you have lovely data on people who live here and how they're commuting to their jobs. Can you give us data on people who work here and tease it out? Are they still working from home? How are they commuting? Are they doing hybrid? Sometimes in the office, sometimes not in the office, and that would really help us figure out what's going on with their office space.
Yeah, let me look into the Census Bureau on that. I'm not sure that was one of the tables that was updated the last time around in the ACS, but I can definitely check into that by workplace geography. The one issue with Census Bureau data is, and this is in a lot of their data sets, they have different mappers online, but a lot of times they don't include federal workers. For whatever reason, they are not captured in the data set. So you will see that the at place employment from other locations is probably about 30, maybe 40,000 less than what we estimate it to be. The Pentagon, we estimate to have about 26,000 jobs in the Pentagon. So, that right there, we can see that it doesn't show up in some of the data sets that we get. So, it can be very frustrating at times when you have to try and understand what's happening in your community as you do, when the data just isn't there. But I can look and see, what we have for that and what the Census Bureau says. I know we do have something in the profile that does it countywide, but I know it would be really helpful to see that for your location as well.
Ben.
I'll second the desire for growth over time. I'd say something I think that would be helpful for everyone is language spoken at home by civic associations. That's not really, outreach is really important. And could maybe spur some more outreach in languages other than English. I also think crosstabs, especially by housing unit type, would be really helpful, given that especially in this area where we have areas where a lot, within the census blocks, a lot of them are high rise, a lot of areas that are single family or multifamily, mostly middle type. And so I imagine based on the, if you see demographic trends between the housing types, that also would help targeting outreach based on kind of where the need is.
Great, thank you for that. I will mention that the language information is available on the census tract demographic dashboard, but that's at the tract level. So you can kind of get an understanding of that. Language data can be tricky as well because the Census Bureau, again, we rely on Census Bureau for that data. And they don't always get down to as fine grained as we would like for all the languages spoken in Arlington. So a lot of times we'll look at the elementary schools and the languages spoken in the elementary schools for that area, and that's really helpful as well. But I can send you a link to that information if that's useful.
Great, thank you.
There was a question in the chat.
Oh, okay, there's a question in the chat from Jacqueline.
Yes,
Jacqueline,
I'm a guest.
you
I'm a
just-
guest, so I didn't know whether as a guest I could ask a question or not.
Please go ahead.
Okay, during your presentation, you indicated that the population has shown a trend going down the last, I think, 2 years. And we all know that changes from the pandemic certainly are part of that. But you also said that you anticipate that it's going to go back up and that there will be continued growth. So my question is, what's the basis for your estimates for growth and how much growth? And, what are you using for data to do those estimates?
Sure, that's a great question. So for growth in the future, we do our forecast and we look at what is on the ground now, what could be on the ground, is there room for growth? Is there density available in different areas based on the general land use plan, based on site plans, based on, adopted plans, form-based code for Columbia Pike. And we look at what is the growth potential. And we forecast that. We look at, the housing units that are directly in the pipeline right now. And we forecast that, look at what is under construction. And we time that growth based on historic absorption rates. But we also take into account what we're seeing, currently trends in the community. So like, for example, I know we're talking about housing, but office space, what's the trend for office space right now? Can we, if we have, how many millions of square feet in the pipeline or approved, can we forecast all that in the next, 30 years? Not so sure about that. But, we do have the same conversations and have the same discussions about housing, what's currently under construction, what has been approved, and what areas have additional density. And we build our forecast from the bottom up. So we look at the net growth in housing units. And then we apply factors from the Census Bureau in terms of occupancy, average household size, by unit type, and by area, and come out with a population forecast. I can tell you that after 2010, we had a big increase in average household size for our population and, schools. We had a lot of kids in schools. Now we're probably seeing the average household size as a county level kind of normalize back down to what it was previously, around that 2.1 persons per household. So all that is kind of taken into account. It's, in short, it's based on housing unit capacity, applying factors to that, and timing it out based on historic absorption trends and also current trends. And I can put a link to our forecast into the chat if that's helpful.
Great, thank you. Carol.
Yeah, that raises another question. One of our biggest concerns in our area, the 22202 area, is the overloading of the school system here. So your data is showing trends. Obviously, the population has gone down during the pandemic, but can your data help us understand in terms of the elementary and the middle school population?
Yes, it can. You can look at the population by age. We also work really closely with APS and share all this data information. We talk to them weekly sometimes, monthly, absolutely, in terms of population trends that are going on. That master housing unit database, like I said, that came about from our work with APS and trying to understand the housing and student generation by housing type. So they use that same data when they do their projections and for student enrollment. And we, share information and go back and forth about, what are the bursts? Are bursts down? If they're the trend for bursts in Northern Virginia, in the state, in the country, is it continues to go down. Fertility rates are decreasing since the 90s, and we really don't see that trend going back up. So, to say yes. We do coordinate with APS. You can use this data, look how it compares to your student enrollment for your areas. Does it make sense? Does it not? I think that we would be open to have that conversation. And if you could help us look at that, that would be great as well, too.
Great. I had two questions, Elizabeth. The first one, I don't know if it's even, I'm asking the right question, but I'd be interested in something like how long people stay here, like how transient is our area? I guess my question is, do you monitor that? And I guess I'm kind of wondering, if you do, what does it tell us? I'm interested from a community building perspective. The longer people stay here, the stronger the community is. So I wondered what your take on that was.
Yeah, I think, having renter housing, you have a higher probability of folks, being more mobile than that owner occupied. But having mobility and where folks live is one of our variables on the race ethnicity dashboard. So I can definitely look at including that as one of the variables on this dashboard, or at least report that information to you all for your area.
Okay, great. And the second question has to do with the term aging in place. That's something that impacts how we think of our community and what the amenities might be going forward. Here's another question, is there a way you can assess that, quantify it?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say if we look at the annual population estimates from the Census Bureau after the decennial census, the Census Bureau does provide those estimates by age, and we see that we've had population declines in every age group except one, and that's age 65 plus. So I'm happy to share that information with you. Unfortunately, right now, the population estimates, Census Bureau's population estimates only go down to the county level. So I can't look at the trend data yet, but hopefully when we have more years of this data, we can see how that's evolving for your community. But I can share with you the countywide data thus far.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for putting this together. And I expect we'll kind of want to have an annual update of sorts as we, the area develops. I think track these numbers would be really helpful.
Great, happy to do that.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll turn it over to Matt. He's going to give us a development plan update. So for the new members, Matt does this just about every meeting because it's actually, there's new information at every meeting. So much development going on. Go ahead, Matt.
Some of this will be very familiar to a few of you. Some of you, I think, might be seeing for the first time. So for everybody's benefit, I do want to kind of carefully orient you to the nature and format of how we track a lot of development activity and what's happening, how we use that internally, and I think ultimately how you might start seeing it if you haven't yet. Before I forget, since there's a lot of new faces, well, not unfamiliar faces, we're not here at the last meeting we had in person, which was last fall, summer.
So, September.
Okay, so if you were not here in September, it's possible. have copies of the Pentagon City Sector Plan that we're going to distribute, so make sure you all go through that.
That plan looks like this for the new members.
So with that, a lot of what, actually, all right, forget it. Beyond the, sure. It's not being a task. Now I feel like I'm teaching a class. Can everybody flip to page 10? All right. In addition to the development updates, I also wanted to provide a quick update on the Amazon HQ2 progress. I think Mike requested, wanted to bring up that issue just to, I think, familiarize everybody with what the county is tracking, what the agreement was, where we are today. So nothing earth-shattering, groundbreaking, but just a good reminder. So with development updates, this, let me see if I can pull it up, is really, I think, a helpful organization of how plans that are submitted are organized by the county. There's a very specific system in that before everybody else can have a chance to weigh in and review it, we first do a very detailed analysis of did we actually receive all the plans that we need based on the type of application that we have. So a lot of that initial kind of technical check-in and review is simply to verify that we have the architecture, the landscape, the civil engineering plans, that is there enough information provided in terms of justification letters, disclosure statements. So that's really the initial point of check-in that happens between planning, zoning, and other staff. But as that begins to take place, and we finally proceed to more detailed plans, the way we group them are conceptual, preliminary, and then final. Final, in this case, does not actually mean final. It actually means that it's ready for public review. So as you go through this is more of a kind of an internal staff organization where conceptual applications simply have a higher level of comment. We're kind of flying at a high altitude. Generally, any kind of reactions, red flags that are provided back to the applicant. Once those get resolved or addressed, or at least noted, we proceed into the preliminary application stage. At this point, there's more information to review. Additional staff get brought in and provide much more detailed feedback back to the applicant team. And once those are addressed, and we also address the technical comments, and we feel like we have the full package of drawings, we accept those site plans, they become final, and that then begins the public review process where the site plan review committee and sometimes the long range planning committee take place, and you will usually have a seat at the table in some form or fashion. As you would imagine, going left to right on this table, the further conceptual submission that we have, the less information that we actually can track and provide in these type of presentations and updates. So as you'll see, the way we organize all the different active projects, the later they are in the review cycle, the more certainty we have about what they're delivering. So there's going to be a lot of disclaimers about things that were either recently or just submitted, because we just don't know quite yet what we're dealing with, but we probably will soon, probably by the next time we meet. So the way we've been organizing this, looking back at just the approved site plans, and I'm not going back to the history of Crystal City, so this is just kind of a starting point of, let's just say 2019, okay? We don't have enough time for all of that, but in this gold rush, if you will, of development activity, I think it was helpful to start tracking what's happening, where is it, who's impacted. And this is actually a lot of what happens behind the scenes in terms of CPHD and DES, the Department of Environmental Services, because all these projects and what's not visible here are directly impacted and impact themselves capital projects that are happening behind the scenes. So all of us really have to kind of coordinate, and the applicants play a big part in that in terms of the timing, the sequencing, and when things actually start construction, so that we can kind of coordinate and work with each other and minimize, because we know we can't avoid completely, issues and closures and potential accidents that may happen from time to time. So this gives you a sense of just color coding the approved projects that are behind us, from the last 3 or 4 years. Adding on top of that, the next category are those final site plan applications, which have been accepted. They've begun their public review process. They're at different stages. I believe Americana's going to the board in April, and I think Crystal Towers is not too far behind, either May or June. So those were the only 2 active final applications that are in the review stage. What we have next are all the other, I'll email this to the group so it's easier that way. But all the other applications that we're tracking in the red here are those conceptual preliminary applications that we are still either learning about, have not been submitted, or evolving at a stage where we don't quite have enough information to confirm exactly how many units, how much retail is going to be delivered. So this is kind of a helpful overview of what's behind us, what's in front of us. Number 12, which is Potomac Yard, is actually off the map, so that's why you're not seeing that number. Another way of looking at this is more of a tabular format, which we're also tracking just how many residential units, how much office, how much retail. And again, as we get into those preliminary applications, there's going to be a little bit more ambiguity about what to expect, but as those projects get going, we'll learn more. One thing I wanted to mention, because it's not on the map, the Pentagon Center block, where Costco is, they have submitted a amendment to their phased development site plan, which again doesn't really have a specific project in mind that imminently may be constructed. But it's more of a long-term reassessment of what I think they have approved back in 2015, and how they may want to shift some of their open spaces, increase them, but at the same time significantly intensify the density that was anticipated on that block, in addition to some land use mixes. So that's another one that we're tracking, and at some point this year, start the public review process. Any questions on those before I switch gears to Amazon? Take a sneak peek at Teams in case there is any. So Amazon, one of the things that I think we're discussing with Mike in terms of just general awareness, and particularly given 2 big announcements recently, Met Park getting very close to opening, and Place taking us, a minor pause, is what is the impact of those 2 decisions and status updates on the general agreement that we have in place? So one of the things we wanted to highlight, and again, this is really oversimplifying what's in place. There's dozens and dozens of pages of agreements that get into much more detail, but at a high level, we felt that it was important to remind everyone that there's a very specific different tracking system in place for the county and for the Commonwealth. With the county side, we're really monitoring office space and how much of it is either occupied or leased. Since the 2019 agreement, moving forward for a 16-year window that would ultimately get us to 2035. Commonwealth, on the other hand, is specifically focusing on jobs. And a lot of times, this is really what gets picked up in the media. What is the annual report? How many jobs were delivered in the area? Less so about the square footages. And that's really what the county's priority is. If you've been reading any of the media, most of it, I think, is fair and accurate. And it does summarize that as of the end of last year, Amazon has exceeded the expectations. So the tracking mechanism that we have, how many of those square feet, how many of those jobs are expected to be delivered each year, they are well above what the expectation was and what the gradual progression would be right now. We'll see what that means for the end of this year, but I think that's a very interesting milestone to highlight. We also felt it was necessary to kind of remind folks that the other side of that equation, right, in that agreement, the county is committed, as is Alexandria, because they're a partner in this, to significant funding in both the infrastructure, transit, open space, affordable housing, in the very area that comprises national landing, the HQ2 area between the 2 jurisdictions. Arlington also has a specific increment of a future tax in the transient occupancy tax that Amazon would receive if that tax base would start to increase. We obviously did not have that. The pandemic had something to do with it. But at the time of the agreement, we did want to highlight what overall expectation of that tax would be through year 2035. And then similarly, on the right side, you can see the Commonwealth's contribution in the agreement, where $22,000 would be potentially up for grabs for every qualifying job that Amazon would deliver in this area. And that would essentially kind of trigger a up to $550 million payment for the first 25,000 jobs, but there is a secondary target if additional, I think, 12,500 jobs will be delivered, and how that payment will continue into the future for that. And the key takeaway here is that despite, I think, Penn Place having a temporary pause, they were actually very aggressive up until this point. We actually see that pause as a very realistic and expected adjustment to where we are, to the progress that they've made. And I think to a lot of time that's still ahead of us. If you think about 2035, it's over a decade from now in terms of how much time they have to, meet their obligations and develop two very large sites. We're talking over 5 million square feet of density. That's significant. So this was something helpful to, I think, highlight. And for those that may be less familiar with how they're going about it, these are some helpful slides that I think I brought up from other presentations where the path to growth. I'm stealing a lot of content here, by the way. I should probably credit these slides to somebody. But a lot of this focuses on what happens before projects like Met Park can open, and how strategically JBG Smith and Amazon start to focus on Crystal City office spaces. And through the end of last year, that's how they've been able to meet that obligation. That's where the new jobs have been going. That's where the lease spaces were. And until such time that the permanent headquarters can open in Pentagon City on the west side of Route 1, that's when I think those buildings can start to make further commitments into the future and meet the additional goals. So these are just examples of some of those spaces. Some of you know these better than I do. But just to kind of give you a sense of the renovations that took place, some of these included just a number of floors, some included the entire buildings. But this really, since 2019, was able to kind of keep this going while Met Park was under construction. Obviously, the two sites, I still, even almost 5 years since the announcement, find myself explaining what these are to a lot of people. But I think it's a helpful visual just to see what's happening. And if you walk by Metropolitan Park now, it's clearly a very different situation. And I don't think anybody's complaining. So this gives you an orientation of the Penn Place and Metropolitan Park block in terms of each other. Specifically in each one, we wanted to kind of just highlight some of the key takeaways of the approvals. This is from December 2019 from Met Park, which obviously delivered significant improvements to the surrounding parcel on East Street, on 15th, but also had a separate public review process for the park itself that was approved along with the naming. And you can see kind of both those things, the buildings and the public space and the perimeter improvements coming together. And I'm sure between staff and the applicant, we really appreciate everybody's patience, given a lot of the issues that has happened on some of the pedestrian closures recently. But that does come with the territory of 2 million square feet being delivered. Just a block north of Penn Place, this gives you another sense of what's been approved in April of last year. Very similar situation, internal public park, surrounded by office buildings. Obviously a grander scale in terms of height and density, and very similar improvements and commitments to affordable housing in both on and off-site improvements. So that's the last slide I had there. Happy to take any questions on what we just covered.
Great. Thanks, Ben. Patrick, maybe you could just put voice to the plan for Penn Place, and I understand you may not have any more details, but yeah, how would you voice it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't have much to add. You did a very good overview. It is a pause. I mean, what I've been telling people is, so HQ2 was planned pre-pandemic. Obviously, the pandemic changed everything, and the honest answer is we just don't need as much office space as quickly. And so that's a part of the pause. You saw in the presentation, we're actually ahead of schedule on jobs. I think we're at 8,000. We publicly announced 8,000. I suspect we're that. And I'd say the good news, I hope you think it's good news, May 1st, it'll probably be later in May, we're all returning to the office. A lot more of these Amazonians wandering around at that park, which is opening. The park, I can't say officially, will be opening very, very soon. And then in June, it all opens up. Excited about retail and lots of great things. That's Met Park, obviously. But I mean, Penn Place, we're still committed. Obviously, it's just going to take a little bit more time than we originally said or announced. But thank you for that. I mean, I do remind people it's always been a long term. It takes a long time to build these things, and so the 2030 kind of horizon, 2035 for the 20,000 jobs has always been timeline. So the actual building just shifted a little bit.
Do you know, is there any plan for the site right now? It's a construction staging.
Yeah, I mean, the plan is to keep it as is. And mainly, I mean, there has been pre-construction work ongoing that is slated to continue this year. There'll be some permitting stuff and things. So I realize it's paused, but there's not enough. It wouldn't make any sense to build something temporary because that would just
Yeah, I know you've heard this before, but has anyone discussed some site cleanup so it looks a bit better while it waits for something to happen?
Good question. I've been passing that along. It's a little bit out of my control. I totally hear you. It's not very
Anything in particular that sort of jumps out?
Well, I would personally, I just think when I walk around there, there's an awful lot of trash.
So trash is, that's,
So,
that's doable. That's
you
inexcusable.
could,
Yeah, well, we can work on
I
that.
can picture what some crews could do over a period of a couple of weeks. It could just make it look a lot less, like.
Trash, Patrick's next. You should blame me. That's our group, that needs to keep their eye on it. So we'll make sure that that's, paid attention to, and you've got my number, and if there's anything that sort of jumps out as an issue, feel free to text.
There's no chance it can be turned into a park temporarily or planting, like a native garden or a vegetable garden or community gardens?
I don't think there would be, probably the honest answer is probably not, because they still have to do, I mean, there's still pre-construction stuff ongoing, so I'm not sure how they would even do that.
Yeah, just some like graphics on the fencing, especially that when you drive down like Army Navy Drive, you look at it, you see like a dirt.
Yeah.
Put some fence graphics with what it's gonna be accomplished, to heal it, it might look nice.
Something I always noticed about that Disney does is they put up graphics and let you know what's happening and you know what you're supposed to look forward to.
A couple questions. One, so what you said, the county said that the community high school is still on track to open. Does that mean, are we gonna go back to, like, if you're gonna put the community school on, sounds like we were second floor of building one, which seems like an okay compromise, although that means that we have to figure out what's happening with retail, building three. Are we gonna go back to SPOC or something like that?
Yeah, it would have to go through, I forget the exact, but yes, it would have to go through a site
plan amendment, I think.
Yeah, but yes.
Do you know what timing of that is gonna look like, or is it because we just don't know what you wanna do?
I don't.
So it sounds like there might be a world where we have building one for a while without the rest of the buildings, if that is kind of the conflict.
I don't know. I mean, in theory, I guess they could phase it out, yes, but I don't know. That hasn't been discussed.
My second question was that, so the site plan for Met Park required a community representative to be liaison, which was recently appointed, and someone actually was surprised that someone from JPG, and I wonder if maybe, I don't know if you were involved in that, as to why it ended up being someone from JPG rather than someone from the community liaison.
I've talked about it. It's the community liaison. I'm thinking of one that's they work for Amazon or that global real estate.
There's someone whose job it is, which is, I was surprised when they contacted us, someone from the county, I think, or someone from JVG, I think, reached out actually, and said like, hey.
It's, I can send you the, so we just, I think a month ago, set up the community liaison, and she is on our global real estate facilities team, will be based here, and works.
And it's possible, so JVG is going to be property managing the building. And
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
So there could be some JVG function coordinating on certain aspects of the site that might be different from the kind of official community liaison, and that might be what's causing the confusion.
Saying that Kathy Gunny is the community liaison for Met Park and the same plan conditions.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, we can get that.
Yep.
Do you mind forwarding me that email?
Yeah, I have a two-part question. First part's Amazon, the second part's JPG. With Med Park opening, how many or how much of the 5 Amazon rental buildings in Crystal City are going to be emptied out? And the second part to JPG is what's going to happen to those vacant places when they move out?
Good question. I think in the near term, we're keeping, I don't know, at 1770, we're keeping for the foreseeable future. Because that's sort of the flagship building. The rest, yeah, I do not know. Good question.
I don't know off the top of my head, so I can't answer the specifics. But there are buildings, I believe, that were always in the shorter term, and so that's a combination of one building that is probably not a candidate for trying to be released, and then other spaces, specifically 4x4, trying to release.
Like 2345 Crystal Drive.
I honestly don't know how that kind of falls in this, but yes, if it were a floor in 2345, that would be a space.
Because obviously the biggest concern is the vacancy rate in Crystal City once Amazon moves to its new headquarters. So that's a pretty critical piece of information.
It is. I think that zooming out a bit, Amazon is a major economic driver here, and so that's something that not just JPG, but the state and the county are excited about as part of the overall pursuit. And so I think that is still the case. And so even though there might be certain floors or certain buildings that Amazon is moving out of, they are still a major employer in the area. As they found in other markets that they operate, there are other great companies that like to co-locate with them because they try to attract similar types of talent. And so that is sort of the overall thinking on kind of how this region continues to grow and benefit as a result of it.
And 241 18th Street will empty out.
241.
You've got 1770 and next door 241.
I honestly don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah. That's car.
I'm glad you're not asking me questions, right?
There's a lot of space. There's a lot of space, and it's a public meeting. I don't want to give the wrong answer, and I'm in trouble for it. But you're correct that there's space that they're staying in for the foreseeable future, and there's space that they're looking at.
That's what happens when you grow up with JVG and Amazon. You have all of these questions.
This is not me trying to avoid the question. I know this is one that we probably talked about for an hour. Do we want to go into it? Do we want to?
I think this is a topic we're going to pick up later in the year. I think Jack or providing something.
Yep.
But if you have a short answer.
Short answer: no official plans, right, to close anything. I think in general, it's always comes up at these and similar meetings because it is a challenge. It's a tough space to operate economically, and I think that's one of from myself or others of, yes, here's this grand plan happening, and I know that's the lack of that answer is frustrating to a lot of people. A lot of people in this room, and so that's sort of the spot that we're stuck in. But there is no current, grand sweeping plan to close anything that's running.
Or leave the ground open, the tunnels on 18th Street to.
So there are currently some requirements in place. Some of them are between JBG and the county. Some of them are between JBG and other property owners that do require us to keep certain sections open. And so those are longstanding agreements that would require things like site plan amendments to change. And there's no plans at the moment to change that.
Reopening is planned for 2025, right? Or the underground.
Reopening which section?
Section from 20th Street.
To coincide with the completion of 2001. Yes. I don't have the exact date, please.
Yeah, so this is an open topic, and we get to one of the next sections. What I'd like to make a list of the things we'd like to come back to talk about later as the year goes on. We have time to cover.
Yeah, just a quick question for Patrick. You said your Amazon people are coming back to work. Is that full time in the office, partial time, variable?
Yeah, so it's 3 days a week.
3 days a week.
It is, you can pick, well, it depends on team. For the most part, you can pick which days of the week you want to come in. I don't know how to predict it, but I expect it to be a lot of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But maybe not, but that's what I would expect. And it'll be phased, I think, that, in May, people will start moving into that park. And then we'll all be invited. The official opening is probably a community day, and it'll be an open house that comes to the park.
Employees gonna have to pay for parking.
Yeah, we do have to pay for parking. We're highly incentivized not.
Right.
So public transit, but yeah, we have.
Do you have any statistics on the number of Amazon employees who are going to be living in this area?
I don't have that. I don't know that we track it, but I can look. I think what we found in Seattle, what happened in Seattle region that we found is happening here is pretty roughly even distribution. Some people like to live right by the office. Some people want to be in the suburbs, environment. So typically it's been pretty evenly distributed. I don't.
Yeah, we talked a while ago about trying to make an outreach for them to join the civic association.
Yes, totally. Would be happy to. My colleague would be involved.
Good idea. Any other questions for Patrick? Okay, so let's shift. Patrick, Farmers Market. And since we've been talking, could you just go over quickly? The point will be, if we want to, as a council, if we're agreeable, I'll send a letter of support. He's engaged the citizens.
Yeah, thank you. So in Med Park, we're hoping to bring a farmers market that will be run by, get my notes so I get all this great. So Eat Loco Farmers Markets, and they're based in Loudoun County, I believe. So they would manage the farmers market. It would be all local vendors that have to be within 150 miles of Arlington County. It would be 80 vendors, so a lot of vendors in this big park. And the focus would be what you would normally get at any great farmers market. So food, artisans, arts. It would be on Saturdays from 9 to all summer and fall. It would stop November 18th, very exactly. It would stop for the season in November, mid-November, and then resume again in March of 24. We're hoping to get it started in June in that park every Saturday. I hope you all agree it's a good idea.
Any questions?
Yeah, this is really more for Rob Mandel than I think it is to Patrick, but what does this mean for the Crystal City Farmers Market? It sounds like it's dead.
Not dead. Rob, do you want to weigh in here?
Yeah, thanks, Carol. The problem with the Crystal City Farmers Market is location. We've not had a location for quite some time. You might recall we started at 1900 Crystal Drive. That site's been out of commission for many years. We moved it to the Circle lot at 241, 251 18th Street. That was very poorly received by Fresh Farm. They did not want to return there. We moved it to 2121 a few years ago. That's probably the most recent location. And we had to pack up there due to the dining in the park construction. We took a pause during the pandemic. That's also the other reason why that took a pause. I think we would have probably tried to find another spot. In the meantime, our main farmers market partner, which is Fresh Farm Markets, a very local purveyor that is active throughout the DC region, they've done some of their own soul searching in terms of their business model. And our conversations with them over the course of the last few months have revealed that they're not ready to take on a Crystal City market until there's a permanent location. So we're trying to plant the seed that when 1900s kind of Vonerf kind of pedestrian street opens, that we'll work with JBG Smith to make it happen there. But you know, that's a work in progress.
That's very helpful. Yeah, Met Park is close to me. I love it. I love the idea, but you know, our civic association, some folks who live towards the south more, it's a bigger walk for them to get to Met Park. So they are asking about the future of the Crystal City Market.
I will say that there was no shortage of staff hours devoted to trying to make this work. We actually also solicited other operators and just didn't have a lot of luck. It's really important for a farmer's market to be successful, to have a good location and a permanent location. The constant moving means that customers never really learn where you are. It takes years to establish permanency. So we'll get there. It's not quite ready yet.
The number of vendors, which is large, which is awesome. But probably indicates you'd like to attract an audience beyond just the easy neighborhood parking and just how you start working.
Yeah, I mean, so there's there's a big garage which can hold quite a bit of traffic. I mean, I think like most things we do for people, it's one of the reasons Amazon is here is all the transportation options. So we anticipate people will take public transportation and other ways to here. I mean, it'll hopefully be fun. It's a good problem to have a very busy farmers market that they're going to local businesses. I mean, traffic maybe.
And farmers markets are inherently a local serving operation. They're not a superstore. They're not Walmart, right? They are neighborhood based and generally as a result walkable, bikeable.
The exception rate is the courthouse farmers market, which if you just see the parking lot, I think its popularity probably has a lot to do, I think, with the accessibility parking. Unfortunately, I don't particularly love it, but also I'm tried there. Yeah. If this happens, although this farmers market is closer, but between this, the Saturday morning Costco parking and the Saturday morning Met Park farmers market parking, is this for the rest of the people? So if you're in,
Yeah,
deeper thinking,
they would have to see how it goes, probably. I mean, the yellow line will be open again.
And it's on the yard station opens up next month.
but I've been shopping at the courthouse market for 35 years. I've shopped at DC Farmers Market in Westover and pretty much any farmers market in the area. I've been there at least once, and there's vendors that I like and I know, I mean, some I've known for 20 years. And so I really liked the Crystal City market because it wasn't at the same time as the courthouse market. So then you could like fill in stuff, berries or breads that they didn't have it, you know, you sort of, but I'm gonna say that I agree. I mean, I don't, from where I live, it would be sort of crazy to spend 45 minutes taking the subway there and back again, and then walking home from the subway. So we drive because we can get there in 10 minutes. But you gotta have to find a place to park. So, and the lot's been pretty filled up with construction workers the last 5 months. But you know, there's enough street parking nearby that's usually not a problem because you're not going to spend more. You know, you're going to go in and spend 20 minutes and get your stuff and get out. But there's you know, it does generate a fair amount of traffic. So I would be really like think about it.
Would that be free on the weekend?
I should know that by now. I don't think
The park,
I don't think it's free.
I don't think it's free, but I think it's worth touching on that in a little bit more detail.
Everything in Crystal City is free on the weekend.
I think that's the case. It was definitely the case at some point. I think that's still the case for Crystal City. I don't know the answer on Penn Place. I'm sorry, on that park. But just when you sort of think about quantifying that parking, the amount of parking garage that's multi-level at that park is a very similar area to what is all surface parked at one level at Costco. And so that amount of parking for the office use is a very low ratio because the office is tall and very dense. But when you think about sort of the number of people that come and park at Costco, it's a very similar amount of parking at that park. And so that is a really large on a Saturday when hopefully you and your colleagues are not at work on a Saturday most of the time. That's a really large empty garage on Saturday to accommodate something like the farmers. Compare that to a adequately sized lot to serve something as high volume as Costco. So I think your point of probably a wait and see and adjust is the right answer, but I think that from just like a parking math perspective, I certainly have a lot of confidence that that lot is going to be able to handle folks who are coming in.
Is the edible garden going to be part of the farmers market?
I mean, technically, yeah, you can go in there, yeah. So yeah, technically.
But I mean, is it going to be producing for the market?
I mean, no. Oh, as you're saying.
Edible garden. Yeah.
The edible garden, I don't think it'll be at the scale that it can be. So you're talking about the farm on the roof?
Yeah.
The edible
No, I'm
garden.
talking about the one in the farm.
That's a good. I will ask her. I doubt it's big enough to kind of produce enough. No, I don't know. Their plans for farmers market day.
At some point, it would be good to hear about what planted horticulturists from Amazon, what they're doing.
I owe you. I know.
Yes, you do.
They've been busy, so.
My second had a question.
Why only seasonal? Again, big farmers markets like Morehouse do off season.
Yeah.
And it's something possible.
Good question for ayahuasca.
I
Really
think
good question.
scale down fall, winter. I think people still want to go.
We go all year round.
Yeah, my dates here.
Eggs, you can still get eggs, you can still get all the winter vegetables.
My pure hypothesis is this is the first year they may just trying like seeing how it goes, and if it's wildly popular, which it will be, I guess you're really speculating that it might, because I'm sure the logo will get going.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, I'd like to get the sense, does this sound like something we'd be willing to support in a letter? Yeah. Okay. All right.
If we can, it's not a good sign.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to just pretty sure that.
We would like it to be successful.
Okay, so Patrick, I'll just go ahead and do that. Patrick hopefully provided the form work from, so Okay, it's about 20 minutes to 9. Once again, I have a pretty full agenda, but we'll focus. Okay. So there's a couple of things we should really talk about tonight. One is our priorities and main concerns for Crystal City and Pentagon City. Now, so historically, we've had a set of concerns for the Crystal City sector plan. They are relatively similar to Pentagon City overall. At the last meeting, we had Aaron from planning walked us through the community benefits process, and that was in response to some concerns that we weren't really making good progress on some of the big community amenities that are in front of us. Typically, these are things which generally require some planning. Aaron walked us through the community benefits process from a county perspective, and you can see that there's a tremendous amount of engagement on the county with the developers. This is work that takes a long time, and Aaron reflected that the more we can keep them apprised of the priorities, the better position the county is to understand what needs to come next. So this year, I thought we should really start to think about that and figure out, to what degree do we, does the council want to continue to keep, review our priorities, update them, keep the county up to date on what the priorities are. On the one hand, priorities don't change that quickly, but there's opportunity. As sites start to come into the planning process, there are certain priorities, there are certain amenities that I think the community, this group of stakeholders will probably start to converge and say, this is the moment to do this thing. So I wanted to have a little conversation about that. Just take 10 minutes or so just to figure out what we want to do, and then we can take it on the rest of the year. Just to give you a quick rundown, so you know the things on the table, things this group is very concerned about. A school, centrally located school, arts space, black box kind of spaces, community center, the transportation elements, essential services like the fire station, Route 1. These are all big issues that we are concerned about. There's a timeliness to all of them. What are people's thoughts on, should we be writing an annual letter or something that kind of reiterates the priorities to the county? I'd like to just open it up there. And I also would like to get, Taylor, you sent me a note on kind of the way developers look at priorities, which I think we ought to think about as well. Anybody want to start off, or do you want to go? Go ahead.
I'm happy to go. Yeah.
Sure.
I guess to answer your question, I think when Aaron says it's helpful, I don't think he really means it is helpful for the county to hear that rank list of priorities. I've heard the same request of us. I think it's helpful for the whole development community to kind of understand that as they think about rank list order of desire. I think your list, you had a ton of them, right? Hit the nail on the head on a ton of them. I would add continued county support to things like the Berry Station and DCA Connection Bridge, the various plans, public open spaces, so Metro Market Square, Center Park, and missing one off the top of my head. So those are the types of things that I'd love to maybe add to that list. And I think that kind of my reason on why this might be helpful is, in addition to these being genuine places that people enjoy, a lot of them in this room, I think that as you kind of step back and think about what are the things that catalyze more community benefits, it's more development. And right now we're at a point where the capital that's out there looking to invest in development is pretty scarce. And so they have the opportunity to be very picky about where in the country and the world they place that capital to fund development. And I think that the more that this area of the region and this area of the county and say, look at how much, this community, this county is investing in major public infrastructure, parks that people love and want to live near, train stations that people use. The more that each and every sort of private developer at the table can go to their capital sources and say, this is a real place that has real backing and is ready to receive real investment. That sort of creates that really positive perpetual cycle. So long answer to yes, I think a letter would be great, and I think you've got some really, really good items on the list.
Robert?
The other reason why I think a priority list would be so important is that for some of these major community benefits, it's unlikely that a single project is going to be able to take it on. There's just not enough bonus that results, because some of these are major efforts. And so coming up with a priority list and then trying to put some high-level math around how much we think it might take in order to execute some of these. Because I do think that the county does a very good job of dealing with community benefits on a single individual site, and saying this site should do this. That when it gets into taking dollars from a site and saying it's going to be contributed towards open space improvement or infrastructure improvements, when those aren't assigned, I have heard frustration from the community of not having a clear understanding and not being able to directly tie this project, this impact is creating this benefit. Sure. So creating that priority list, I think, gives staff more insight, saying, okay, as they think about general allocations from balanced packages, when there is an open space allocation, when there's an infrastructure allocation, this is where it should be going to satisfy that first priority.
I think we need some more information in order to make a smart sense. Building up that comment, community benefits talks about community benefits are not one thing. The way that I think I would personally see them. There are lowest density community benefits. I don't even have a good sense of, in that development map that was showing us, what is the lowest density anticipated pot? How much is going to go for, like, your average standard site plan affordable housing contribution, and then like what is left over that could go towards a parks fund or a community center fund, and what that looks like, and that compared to what would then be needed from the CIP to go towards those things, and what is already funded in the CIP, and what is not, what the timing is. Because, for example, if we're talking about priorities, we know that there is a Virginia Highlands Plan Master Park planning process that would include a community center potentially as part of that. So I imagine the county would like to know, is that a priority for the district or not? But understanding the interconnected web of county funding versus like developer contributed funding by site, by kind of what the timeline could look like, by bonus density. And even, you mentioned CPCC, which is sort of a community benefit, but it's not funded through either of those sources. It's funded by state funds. I think we need a better picture of how those all tie together in order to have a really well thought out list, rather than something that's kind of based in not as much reality.
Just wants.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's our base wants, but we don't, because we don't have a realistic sense of what's possible. We wind up in debates among ourselves that aren't really very productive.
Right.
And if we understand about zero sum, we understand we're competing with the rest of Arlington for money for things, and we're supposed to be generating revenue for them, but we need investment here, and that's our frustration. Is we're an urban area, we're denser, we need investment, we feel like we deserve that investment, but we're up against all the other priorities in the county.
But it sounds like the developers themselves are not, especially for these big projects, how does that happen? That you have some sense of how do we understand the network that Ben was talking about, and this idea that if there's a big thing out there, a theater, and it's, you would have a bunch of sites go down, that's not me. How do you establish the pool or the framework for that to happen?
start, I think, to Ben's point, some benefit in servicing the station that Aaron and I did, that was last year. Because it pretty much had everything I just heard requested. And maybe what we can try to do is go back with a dozen or so projects, right?
Yeah.
Mainly at this point under the Crystal City Sector Plan. And in each case, now that you see the different buckets we fill, right? Each one trying to be as diverse as possible. Affordability, open space, transportation. But in each case, how much bonus density was at play that generated that? Because that relationship, I agree, is very critical. And to me, there were instances where it was very eye-opening. The way in which we were able to get, and I know it's becoming a sore topic, but the library in Crystal City, right? Behind 1900.
Right.
Just the pure value of what it needs for a 20, 30-year period to establish at least money on our side to fit it out. I mean, it's incredible figures. And there's no way, even for something like that, as critical as it is, for any particular project to holistically deliver without help. And even then, what happens in year 21, right? So that same approach, I think, needs to be applied to, I think, something like a performing arts space, where if we know that it's out there, and a group like this, Ability highlights and regularly reminds us of that I think is something that staff can take back in the preliminary discussions we're having with various projects where, well, let's understand what type of a box we're looking for, right? Because you got to start with how much space certain things will need. Are there projects that can even spatially accommodate that? Let's start there. Then we can have the second conversation about, well, what does the funding look like? And maybe is there an opportunity for a certain project? And let's just be real, we'd have to forego all the other baskets we typically fill to then try to focus.
We understand.
Right. So that's I think the conversation that we need to have.
It was a good chart. We waited a lot of years. We kept asking about that. We put it together.
Yeah. Is that, this group could take a crack at trying to propose allocation scenarios. I think that's really difficult, really time consuming, requires a lot of assumptions. Is it helping, whereas I think staff has such a bigger, broader view of the field, would it be helpful for us to sort of provide that ranked list and that you guys do so well? Is that a good start, or is there more, or does this want to produce more? I guess is one of the questions.
I think in terms of performing arts space, community center probably would be, because I think those particularly the community center, now having the CIP behind us and having now finally a line item for Virginia Highlands Park, I could see that, one would argue, is an opening entry to conversation about, well, what do we expect in something like that? Community center space, maybe other features. Let's start to have those conversations, because in a year's time, we're going to be discussing CIP again. Maybe some of the projects that have already been funded start to come off. Begin the battle again for 2034 now, whatever it is. So trying to kind of have a better understanding of, connecting the dots. And then, quite frankly, I think it takes not just the village, but, staff, APS, a lot of us. And I don't think anybody has a crystal ball or has been able to successfully do this otherwise. So we're definitely not perfect, and I think we can really appreciate some prioritization. Right.
Yeah, I think we need to, every year, do a letter with with our priorities and prioritization. One of my experiences has been that as people move on, organizations forget. And if we don't do it every year and remind people of that, we started with livability, did the listing of it, it had a lot of impact, but that's sort of faded away now. People aren't paying much attention to that, but if this group can do that, and as part of that, since Matt's already raised that, let me share a concern with this group that most of you probably are not aware of, and that is that, and it's not just for our area, but it's for all of Arlington County, and that is Cinetic Theater. I've already warned Taylor that I was going to raise this evening because since at least 2019, several of us have been working to try to help to find another home for Cinetic when 1800 South Bell is redeveloped, because as Amazon is vacating with Penn Park right at this point. But nothing's happened. There is no venue. There is no plan. There's nothing in 1800. There's nothing in 25, 24. 25 Crystal Drive at this point. So we have Cinetic Theater that has just been informed by JVG that when their lease expires in 2023, they're out. And maybe they can go to a little bit into 2024, but that's going to mess up their season. So at this point, do we want to have Cinetic, which is a major draw for Arlington County and for our area, brings it into the restaurants? And what can we do in order to help find a temporary venue and a permanent venue? We came up with the Black Box Theater in 2019, actually. A group of us worked with JVG, with the BID, and with Enhancing Arlington Arts and Cinetic to come up with a plan for that. It's died out because nobody seems to remember it. And if that is a priority, either to keep Cinetic or to have a Black Box theater, the performance that Matt is referring to, this group is critical for that. I talked to Taylor a little bit before, and he doesn't have any real response to that at this point, but I'll let you comment on my concern and
I'll try and
raise
together,
it.
but I hope it's a real response. Yes, their lease is, the term of their lease is over, I believe in 2024. We had active conversations with them about that. They're aware of it. I don't think it's fair to say that no one is paying attention, that JG or the county or others to this issue. I think that the issue of Cinetic and performance arts falls firmly in this bucket of this is a multi-site plan community benefit. And I think that's not a decision that anyone in this room, anyone at JVG, or even anyone in the county alone can make, right? I think when you start to talk about a project that is going to cost tens of millions, you're now looking at in the context of the entirety of large projects, community benefit funding. So I think that then takes, if this group says that, Cinetic Theater and finding a new home and funding that through community benefit dollars, CFP dollars, what have you, if that is the number one priority of this group, then I think that's something that we need to be vocal about, because it's going to take that amount of advocacy to find a way to fill multiple buckets.
We did talk at one point about 25 Crystal Drive, which is installed because of the height of the site primarily. But then the office problem gets being redeveloped. The plan is being changed, as I understand it. But we talked about that because that would draw from Alexandria, it would draw from Arlington, it would be on the transit way, it would be the perfect way. But again, it's a huge community benefit, even if it's just Cinetic. But I raise it to this group for you to be aware of it, because if we lose Cinetic, we're losing a very big attraction for Arlington County and for our area.
But just one other comment, just to the point that was made earlier, that some of these community benefits are so large, not a single development. Right. There's another potential tool with tax increment financing that's used elsewhere in the region, a lot in DC. There has been one done at Boston. It is a good tool where, the concern of developing projects, and then we're competing for those dollars. And this is a way that developments in this area that generate tax rates in the future then can go pay for those developments in this area, then pay for them. It's just another tool that maybe you want to raise the county.
Is that a TIF?
Yes, exactly. So, again, it's really no cost to the county because it's just future taxes that if the project didn't go forward, you would never realize those taxes. It's really a good financing tool. Some of these larger benefits. Right.
It's for the streetcar and used for transportation purposes.
I think pre-pandemic, I'm trying to remember the name of county employee, but we had someone come from the actual office and use. Right? Might be worth seeing if that could be a meeting we have. I think when Christopher did a really good job of advocating for the TIF, and I think it was Jason, explained that Arlington is typically very protective of its rating, and TIF has an impact on that. But there was some receptiveness to the idea that exploring it. It'd be great if we as a group could maybe push for that again.
And the perception percentage was reduced from Crystal City. When I talked to Mark Schwartz about this and asked whether it could be raised back up again, he laughed and said probably not.
Hey, Rob Mandel, did you have a comment to make?
While you're laughing.
We're crying.
I was anticipating what Mark Schwartz's response was to that question, and I was right on. No, I mean, I'm just listening. I mean, I think these are all very familiar conversations. We've had these at the CCCRC for many years about priorities, about art in general, and how do we move the needle on these things. We've talked about tax increment financing ad nauseum, I think, at these platforms, and been told, pretty bluntly, I think, by the county that they don't really like to use that tool unless it's got a very specific, direct purpose. It relates to the bond ratings and the risk that's associated with those tools. I mean, we're very risk averse in that space. As Rich mentioned, lots of jurisdictions are using the leveraging tool, and you focus on investments that have a good track record at earning a return on investment. And I just think that's the risk portion that it just seems like the county hasn't been willing to step into. It's a choice. It's a policy choice. I mean, I see investments in the arts. It has to be led by the county. This is a space that there is no private philanthropic entity at this stage that's stepping in to decide that they're going to do a capital raise. In my dream world, Synetic has been doing a capital raise for the last decade. But that hasn't been the case. Are we getting kicked out?
That might be out of my control because the whole building is wired at a certain time to this.
Carry that conversation on too far.
You want to text him and
There you
go. Did I get cut off? That's great. I got the hook.
All right. So that's a good reminder. It is 9 o'clock, so let's start to think about wrapping up. Why don't you finish your comment, Rob? Okay.
That's okay. I'll just hand the baton.
Okay, so it sounds like it does make sense to write an annual letter. This is a non-CIP year. Can we just, Matt, would it be helpful just to pose the question? How does the county propose to handle these amenities that will require multiple sites? Let's see. If we were to write a letter, so in our charge, we can go over the charge tonight, but the charge says you put together committees to do things. So it's done. Is there anyone here who's interested in helping draft a letter to the county that asks the question about how we fund these big community amenities that require more than an individual site can contribute? Anybody?
I'd be on the committee, but I'm not a tax person, so.
Okay. Well, I think we don't want to out-clever ourselves, so it's good just to pose the question. But if you're willing, I can help out. If anybody else want to help draft a letter, and then we'll send it around. Okay, Susan? Great. Okay, good. Let's take that for action. All right, so Carol. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll get that letter drafted, we'll send it around, make sure it sounds hits the right points, and then we'll send it off to the county. I think that's a good start, and then maybe in June we can really pick up the getting the priorities established for Okay, so we are at 9 o'clock. There were, I think we want to push a few items to the next meeting. One item I want to, there's two items that I would still like to just briefly talk about. Ben, do you want to talk about the mid-block crossing?
No, yeah. This is something, so, our friends at Buck know very well and supportive of, I believe. So the last Crystal Towers, this is right, the infill development that Buck is proposing, and we had a second, I think, final SPRC a week or two ago, at Crystal Towers, basically across from the Marriott along. And there is something, I think the site plan seemed pretty universally agreed on as a priority on that site, is having a mid-block pedestrian and presumably bike crossing across Eads between, it would be between 15th and 18th. And we heard some negative feedback about that concept from the county staff there, who had done an analysis and felt it was unsafe. And I think that the pushback on that from the SPRC was, well, people are going to cross anyway because that entrance to the site, the driveway, literally goes directly into that Marriott, to that entrance to the underground, and particularly when Route 1 comes to grade at 18th Street, that pathway to the metro, to the Crystal City Metro, is going to get a little bit harder, and you're going to have a lot more people who want to take that easier, less stressed pedestrian underground pathway. So this is something that hopefully we can change the county staff's mind on, that you need to build into your risk analysis that it's better to have maybe a slightly risky pedestrian mid-block crossing and design the street as necessary to allow for that, also whatever is needed, rather than people who are jaywalking in the middle of the street anyway and getting hit by cars.
Just for the record, I've seen that happen before.
Yeah, I'm sure. So I don't know what we do, we're supportive of it, but it's important, I think, that we push back on that, pushback from the county.
Unfortunately, Chris Slatt from the Transportation Commission was unable to attend tonight. But I wanted to get folks, we just got a couple minutes, but to just, this is an example of that integration issue, where a particular site may have a thing that doesn't quite move the needle. But we talk about the integrated approach that we're trying to take for Crystal City, how important it is for people who are on foot to try to stick to their desired lines. Want to get some sense of it. And I know there's a lot of people in the group who've been following the Route 1 discussion. Any comments quickly on this? Jeff?
So I just walked through there yesterday, just get a sense of it. And I think it's going to be more important when the construction starts to occur in the 18th and 15th. The construction's, they're going to be sidewalks. Nobody's going to know how to get across them. The safe way to get there is going to be through that other thing. But it goes through the Marriott lobby and it goes through that port to share where they've got all that turning traffic. So I get why transportation is concerned about that. But we've got maybe, a year and a half before the Route 1 construction comes in. But our transportation people should be looking at, is there a way to make that a safe pedestrian route, particularly during that period of construction. And the other thing is there a right of way for just pedestrians to go through the Marriott lobby? And that's I assume that's their property. So is that a public right of way to get through
I
that?
don't know where that is.
People do it. Yeah.
Oh, no, yeah.
Stops.
They can close that in, I get it. I have to do some more digging, but I'm not aware that we secured something.
That'd be worth checking because the Route 1 group has put lines on a map showing this is how people are going to get the underground.
The connectivity and super block problem, and the connectivity continues to be one of the things we keep talking about.
And why would they have a crosswalk mid-block up further up on Eads between the Penn Place and 11th Street, and you couldn't do one here between Crystal Towers and the Marriott? the logic.
I think for transportation, it's those driveways with those vehicles with turning movements in and out, parking, pedestrians. And they don't want the kind of approach. People go up to 15th and 18th, cross over Eves, and then come and walk down the block. They just don't want to go.
It's worse now. What do we do?
Yeah, well, people go to jail.
I think Rob had his hand up.
Yes, Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody, we had this very same battle for several years along Crystal Drive, where we wanted to put a crosswalk where the Crystal City connector enters onto Crystal Drive. And the county repeatedly said, no, it's not good. It's too close to the other intersection. And it really took a lot of pushing. I think even Taylor, you might remember some of this. I wonder whether eventually they'll come around, but I'm sensitive to the nature of the development, and is there a way to not preclude its addition later if we can't get it done? Obviously, don't want to rock the boat there, but something I was thinking about in my mind as an alternative to squeezing it into the site plan conditions now.
Right. Pam.
Yeah, with the pedestrian advisory committee, the first person to raise this is being really important. And Chris is here, but he actually supported it too. And he said he was going to say something if I hadn't. Yeah. Everybody in the SPRC said, yes, you got to do this. You're in favor of it, right?
I think
you're not against it.
we are certainly not against it. I think to Rob's point, I don't think anything that we are proposing is precluding what the potential location could be.
Right.
Okay.
And from my perspective, the sooner it gets better.
Right.
It's already an issue. Once Crystal Towers is completed, it's going to be more people going to be doing that. And Amazon. If Group 1 goes down, yes, it's absolutely. Anyway.
Any other comments on this? Okay. So the thing I'm wondering, and I'd really like some guidance, is this something that this council should plan and act and reinforce the request of the county look at it again? I think the SPRC participants will do it. I think the transportation committee was being encouraged to take it up themselves. What are your guys' thoughts on this?
It would be nice if if you could write a letter to the planning commission before this goes to SPRC about this, but I don't know what the kind of range of topics, that folks are comfortable taking on here.
Right, and I'm not either. I just want to see where folks are. Development community, what's your sense of it?
I need to abstain.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah. Okay.
Have you made any effort to get the two civic associations to send a joint letter?
Good.
We could do that too.
Okay. Why don't we do that, and we can say about this.
That's right on the border.
Yeah.
It's where Judy lives.
I think as you guys develop that, regardless of which, for all civic associations, it's good to submit it at the time, like you said, to the planning commission, and county board. At the end of the day, we all, and especially the county board, are going to be looking at how each responds to and addresses that letter. Ultimately, they're going to be on the record as well to signal one way or another how they feel about it. And there's been instances in the past where certain things come up consistently. The county board has the authority to direct the management to take a look, prioritize certain efforts. So that's certainly happen. I'm not saying it will here. I'm just saying it won't happen. You won't even have a chance without the letter.
Alrighty. Okay, we're 1:15, so I think let's wrap up. And we
The
will.
dates for the next meeting, were they?
So the proposed date was June 15th. That's a Thursday. That works for you. I think you had a conflict.
Yeah, I won't be here.
Okay. Anybody else have conflicts?
I may have a conflict, but I'll let you know.
All right.
Will
Please.
be virtual.
What's that?
The meeting will be virtual.
It could be virtual. I'd like to reserve the last meeting of the year, December, to be virtual. But we can do one, and that means September cannot be.
Right.
Okay, so, yeah, we could do that virtually.
I'm returning from Ireland that night. I don't think I'm gonna be.
You gotta bring- Yes.
Okay, with that, let's adjourn. Okay.
Who's gonna see?
Yeah, you can see it.
I know
Likewise.
Russell would.
My husband came from Cole. Oh, yeah.
See, yeah, yeah.
He,
Person.
Where you going?
My daughter has allergies, so she's been tracking.
Congrats.
all of them.
Great.